All right, friends. So as I said, I'm Ren. I am the co-director of Temescal Associates and the How Kids Learn Foundation, along with my esteemed colleague and founder, Sam Piha. And you are here for Social Media and Youth Mental Health webinar. So let me just say that we know that it is now well documented that social media addiction is a serious problem, especially for youth. We have numerous studies that have found that young people who spend many hours on social media have higher rates of depression, anxiety, sleep disturbance, suicide, and low self-esteem. Research is also showing that young people are particularly susceptible to psychologically manipulative algorithms that social media platforms use to keep users, not just young users, glued to the screen. These features have young people compulsively spending time on platforms, which is why researchers refer to it as a social media addiction. Social media is also hooking young users by using push notification that lure people back to the platform or app at all hours of the day. The Center for Disease Control and Prevention reports that children in the US spend between 6 to 14 hours a day in front of a screen, with much of that time viewing social media content. We think that after-school programs are especially well positioned to address the negative impacts of social media on youth mental health. We have nationally 10.2 million young people who participate in our after-school programs. So today is designed to raise awareness and understanding and offer recommendations on how after-school programs can lessen this impact and consider the best ways to promote mental health and youth participants, among our youth participants. We have several experienced panelists today that can help us understand more about this topic. I'm going to briefly introduce our panelists, and then I'm going to ask them to say a little bit more about themselves and their organizations during their presentation. So let's see who's on deck today. We have Mahogany Selman, who is the Advocacy and Health Coordinator of Girls Inc. of Alameda County. We also have Diana Graber, founder of Cyber Civics. Jamie Nunez, who is coming to us from Hawaii this morning, the Western Region Educational Manager, Common Sense Media, and Elizabeth Gaines, the founder and CEO of Children's Funding Projects. So I hope that you can see at the bottom of your screen that there's a question and answer button. You can put your questions in there and we'll bring you off mic to engage with the panelists if you would like that. There's also a chat function, so you are welcome to chat with each other during the webinar. Everything that's being presented to you today will be given to you today at the end of this webinar. And as you can see, the webinar is being recorded, so that will also be sent to you as well. All right. I think that we have Diana, who is going to kick us off.
Okay, let me share my screen here. Bear with me.
Sure.
Okay, can you see that?
Looks great, Diana.
Great, thank you. I always need to find out because it looks great for me, but I'm not sure everyone there can see the same thing. Well, hello, everybody. I'm Diana Graber. I'm the founder of Cyber Civics, which is a digital literacy curriculum. Also the founder of CyberWise, which is a resource site for parents and teachers. And I'm the author of a book called Raising Humans in a Digital World, Helping Kids Build a Healthy Relationship with Technology. So I'm really excited to be here with you today to talk about social media and youth mental health. It's a very important topic, as we all know. So let's dive right in here. Okay, childhood has changed. This is childhood really not all that long ago in terms of how long humans have been on the planet, right? This is childhood today, looks very different. Cell phones seem to be at the center of all their social interactions. So this has changed so much about how kids socialize, how they grow up, how they think about themselves, etc. All right, and we know that they're spending a lot of time with these little devices. This is some research, you've probably seen this from Pew Internet, about teens who say they're online almost constantly has doubled since 2015. If you look at the bar to the far right, 46% of teens say they are online almost constantly. Now that always blows me away because I'm like, what does that mean? Like, does that mean in the middle of the night they're online? So that's a big number, right? And then 47% say they're on several times a day. You've seen the headlines. Let's take a quick review here. Surgeon General issues a new advisory about the effects of social media use on youth mental health. The White House raised alarm on the same topic. The American Psychological Association issued a health advisory on social media youth and adolescents. Teachers, as you know, are on the front lines of this battle. We've seen schools across the country this year ban the use of cell phones in school, and experts everywhere are warning us of the danger of social media for youth mental health. So it's a big topic. The media is on it. Everyone's worried about this. So what can we do about it? First of all, let's take a look at the fact that this stuff is not going away. We cannot wave a magic wand as much as many parents would love to and say, poof, it's gone. 54% of teens say it would be hard to give up social media. And then 55% think the time they spend with social media is about right. Only 36% think that they spend too much time. So it's not going away. They're using it for different reasons, which we'll talk about in a moment. And then just a quick look at what they're doing online. And I love to point this out because we forget that YouTube is social media. Kids are using it a lot. 95% of teens watch YouTube. So it's by far and away the biggest usage as far as social media. And then pretty far below them is TikTok, Instagram, and Snapchat, which take turns, vying for that second place. Right now it's TikTok. And all of these are very visual mediums, a lot of video happening. So that's what kids are really looking for when they go online. All right, so we learned some really important lessons during COVID about social media. We realized, well, technology in general, we realized that kids really needed it to do their schoolwork. We would have been lost without it, right? They needed it to maintain connections with family and friends. And the research showed that social media and video games provided temporary relief from real life and offered important opportunities for social engagement. So there were some positive uses there. The other thing, the headlines don't tell the whole story. And I want us to really think about that, because if you dive more deeply into all of these surveys or headlines that I just showed you, there is more to the story. For example, in the Pew Internet research, they say that despite much publicized dangers, teens are more likely to report positive than negative experiences in their social media use. If you dive into that US Surgeon General's advisory, they say that teens report that social media helps them feel more accepted, 58%. Like they have people who can support them through tough times, 67%. Like they have a place to show their creative side, 71%. And more connected to what's going on in their friends' lives, 80%. So significant number of kids who report positive uses of social media. So in no way do I want to discount the fact that for many kids or some kids, social media is having a detrimental effect on their mental health. Our job, I think, as parents, teachers, educators, after school providers, is to think about how we protect the mental health of all youth. And I have some ideas on how we can do that. But first, I'm going to tell you what I believe does not work. And this is based on being in this business for a long time. Fear doesn't work. We are not going to scare kids away from their devices. Their friends are there. The fun is there. Fear does not get us anywhere. Bans don't work, in my belief. I think banning cell phones is a half measure. I think in addition to banning them, we have to teach kids how to use these things in a safe, healthy, balanced way. Legislation doesn't seem to be working. It takes a really long time for laws to get passed. we can't really look at the tech companies because it's not in their self-interest to have fewer viewers on their sites. And then finally, parental controls for teens, I don't think they work because teens are really good at getting around them. So in my view, there's two really effective measures to help kids in their mental health with social media: waiting and educating. So I'm going to talk about the easy one first. It's so easy, and I just can't believe we don't make more use of waiting. I think delaying giving a child a connected device as long as possible is such an effective measure for so many reasons. Number one, we know that every online interaction requires ethical thinking, right? Do I upload a picture that's going to hurt my friend's feelings? Do I download misinformation and share it with others? All of that stuff requires higher order thinking that this child on the left is incapable of doing. They just do not have the capacity for this kind of thinking or reasoning before they reach early adolescence. And we know that tech companies, they don't really consider the vulnerabilities of these young children when they design their products. It's not really in their best interest to do so. Yet we know that 38% of children between 8 and 12 open accounts by simply lying about their age. So I think if we can really help kids delay, it helps them establish those social and emotional skills that they're going to need so desperately when they go online. So that's the easy measure. Here's the harder one, but I think the most effective one, and that's educating. And again, when I said to read more deeply into those reports, the APA in their health advisory, they say, psychological research shows that children from a young age should be taught digital literacy skills, such as identifying misinformation, protecting privacy, understanding how people can misrepresent themselves online, and how to critically evaluate misinformation. So these are things that kids will need regardless what they do, because every kid will have digital media as part of their life, regardless of the career they go into. So we've really doubled down on this at CyberCivics. Since 2012, we've offered just an array of digital literacy lessons that really prepare kids to use social media in a balanced and healthy way. For 4th and 5th graders, we have something called digital on-ramps, and we really focus on SEL skills, values, and just the basics of online safety and technology use. And then in middle school, our CyberCivics curriculum is very in-depth. We start with digital citizenship, which is the safe and responsible use of tools. Level 2 is information literacy, which is how to use the internet as a research source. And finally, media literacy, which is using your critical thinking skills to analyze media messages. Now, this is used since 2012 by a lot of schools, but a lot of after-school programs use this too. These lessons are really easy to teach. There's slides, there's videos. So you really don't have to know anything about technology to deliver these lessons to students. So I'm going to show you an example, and staying with today's theme, I'm going to show you a couple of our managing emotions lessons that we do for 4th and 5th graders. I'm going to show you managing your emotions online, first by starting with a video.
When we're scrolling through the online world, we'll likely come across a lot of different types of posts, media, hot takes, and opinions. Some of the stuff we see might be funny or inspiring, but some of the stuff could be hurtful, mean-spirited, or even downright cruel. When we see people being mean online, it can really have an effect on our own emotions. It might make us feel sad and hurt or even angry. These feelings can arise from posts made by people we know, or even posts made by complete strangers we'll never meet in person. And when we feel such strong emotions, it's normal for us to feel like we have to react. If a friend were to post a mean comment about me, for example, my first reaction might be to retaliate. If I felt attacked, I'd be tempted to post something equally mean to get back at the person who was mean and cruel to me online. But I know that when I'm feeling a lot of emotions, like anger and sadness, it's best for me to take a breath, calm down, and identify how I'm really feeling before I take action. Was their post serious? Am I misunderstanding their intentions? Should I try to shrug it off and walk away? Or is it serious enough to ask an adult for help? When we feel strong emotions, it can be tempting to add fuel to the fire. But this is never the right thing to do. I'm not the kind of owl who posts mean things online. Getting worked up about someone else's cruelty or trolling is a waste of our time and focus. Being online sadly means that sometimes we will encounter things that make us feel sad, hurt, frustrated, or even mad. Maybe it'll be a mean post, or perhaps we'll get left out of a group chat. We might even become the target of a cyberbully, or encounter mean or hateful language during an online game. We might read something thoughtless or see a video we disagree with that makes us very angry. The key here is to identify your feelings. If you ever experience an emotional reaction to something you encounter online, remember that you can, number 1, leave the game, site, app, or put down your device and give yourself a break. Number 2, unfollow or block negative people and things. Number 3, talk to a trusted adult about what you see and how it makes you feel. Number 4, report users or content to the site or app that it occurs on. Online and off, remember to check in with yourself and how you are feeling. I like to step away, take a deep breath, and ask myself, is this really worth my time? Sometimes the answer is simply no.
So anyway, we have a bunch of little videos where our owl is encountering all these situations. But what I really like are the activities afterwards that kids can do together or solely. And they're very easy. We provide the educators with these forms here. And for this activity, the kids just learn what they can do. So we give them some scenarios. Justin is playing a video game. He is wearing headphones that allow him to hear what others are saying. He hears many mean comments directed at him. Loser, such a newbie. What emotions do you think Justin is feeling? Based on what you learned in this lesson, what advice would you give Justin? And then there's another one about Heather loves cats. She keeps seeing posts about cats in shelters like this one. How do you think she is feeling? Based on what you learned, what advice would you give Heather? So we try to provide them with scenarios they might encounter online and let them do them offline first so that they can start realizing the feelings that might emerge from things they see online. And then for middle school, we kind of ramp it up. And I wanted to point out one more thing from the health advisory from the APA. And I love this advice. They say one way to teach skills may be to lean into teens' inherent skepticism, whether it's a stranger trying to message them on Instagram or TikTok earning money by collecting their data or showing them branded content. This is such a powerful statement because we know social media manipulates us in so many different ways. And when you teach that to teens, who hates to be manipulated or told what to do most, right? A teenager. So when they understand that it's their phones that are doing this to them, believe me, they just encounter them in a completely different way. So this is something we cover a lot in the middle school level of cyber civics. We have a whole unit on privacy and personal information and algorithms and all of that. And what I wanted to show you really quickly today is just a lesson on tech addiction, talking to kids about the persuasive technologies that companies use to hold on to their attention. So I'm not going to play the whole video. I'm just going to play you a piece of it, just so you get a sense on how we kind of ramp it up for the late middle school.
Does it ever feel nearly impossible to put down a phone or walk away from the computer? Have you ever had trouble exiting a video game or a group chat? If your answer is yes, you're not alone. Today's technologies can be very persuasive. In fact, many platforms are built using proven persuasive technology techniques. This means that their technology has been designed specifically to change its users' opinions, attitudes, or behaviors. When tech companies build a new product, their objective, understandably, is usually to make money. In order to achieve this goal, they have to keep their users engaged for as long as possible. Persuasive technology can help them achieve this.
So anyway, it goes into what all these different persuasive technology techniques are. And then this is a lesson plan that comes with the middle school curriculum. Just the first page here on the left, you see we align it with all the current standards and the learning objectives. And then I pulled one page from the student work. And this one, because they're older, we have the kids read excerpts about how technology specifically persuades teenagers' brains to stay hooked. So they read the little excerpt, and then we have them in groups do discussion questions. In this case, do you think tech companies should take the above information into consideration when they design their products? What persuasive technologies, if any, have you encountered? What changes, if any, might be implemented to help young people resist persuasive technology? And then sometimes there's homework. In this case, we ask the teens to really think about this topic and write a 1 to 2 page paragraph about it or essay about it. So that kind of gives you an example of how these lessons tackle these topics and really prepare kids to understand how to use technology in a really safe and balanced way. And this is just so important because, as I said earlier, this stuff isn't going away. We've got to prepare them to use it well. The good news is, if you're here with us in California, California just joined a small growing number of states requiring K through 12 media literacy, which is awesome. It's really exciting to see this happening all over the US, especially here on the West Coast. I think the drawback is it really doesn't tell teachers how to get the curriculum or where to go to get it or what to teach. So hopefully there's people like us that are filling in the blanks. This is Cyber Civics. If you are looking for a program for after school, feel free to reach out to me. It's very reasonable and it's really easy to deliver. And we have it for all different age levels. And then if you have parents or teachers in your community, this is our resource site for them. We have these learning hubs that cover all these topics. We look at TikTok, Snapchat, all of that if they need more information. And then here's my book. It's on Amazon. And what I love is the discussion guide, actually almost more than the book, because it's free on our website. And what I really try to do is get groups to talk about the stuff together, read a chapter, talk about the topics. It really helps kids when adults are on the same page. So, and then finally, I'm super easy to find. If you're interested in the curriculum or you want to try a lesson or just want to talk to me about it, please feel free to reach out. I'm here just about all the time. So thank you so much for inviting me today. And I look forward to discussing this topic. Alrighty, stop my share.
Thank you so much, Diana. Really appreciate those beautiful lessons, great videos. Does anybody have any comments at this point? Not necessary, just checking. All right. Then Elizabeth, I will turn it over to you.
Great. And while I'm doing this, I will just say, to your point at the beginning, Ren, my phone used to be, I had it named Elizabeth's Addiction about 8 years ago. I named it that because I realized like there were times when I was just like, throw it across the bed, like get this thing out of here, you know? So I'd show up on Zoom sometimes and it would say Elizabeth's Addiction. And I was like, oops, I gotta, I gotta rename that. So I'm Elizabeth Gaines. I'm the founder and CEO of Children's Funding Project. I founded this about 8 years ago to respond to really a lifelong career in child and youth advocacy work. I started my career running after school programs. And all throughout, money was an issue, right? Whatever stage of my career, state advocacy, worked at the Forum for Youth Investment for about 14 years before I founded this organization. Everywhere I was, a core throughput was where are the resources in these systems to support young people and their positive development. So that's sort of where we are. I set myself a timer. I am going to fly through the material on what is happening in this intense period around social media litigation. So all the things Diana just talked about the intentionality of these companies in making their products addictive. Want to give you just an update on where things stand with that, because I think there are real implications for those of us who care about young people and the programs that can exist to support their positive development. So just real quick, Children's Funding Project is an organization that laser focuses on the resources in our systems, primarily at the state, local, and Native Nations levels. And we really are out here trying to help communities maintain equitable, coordinated, sustained funding for comprehensive programs and services for kids from the time they're little to the time they're big. We do a whole bunch of stuff, but I'm going to focus on the revenue side here. We do a lot of what we call fiscal mapping and cost modeling, but today I want to talk about one unique revenue option that could exist. And so we do a lot of work to help people with sort of making sense of the typical sources of funding we go to support children and youth in their development. But we also are as an organization sitting at the national level, trying to collect examples of where communities are doing interesting things to find other resources. So you see some of them here. I'm obviously going to focus on the legal settlements piece for the next 13 minutes. The opportunity that we see is sort of consolidated in this multi-district litigation. I'm not going to go into detail on this, but I actually am going to switch to my notes view so that I can make sure to tell you some of the intricate pieces of some of this. So, okay, here we go. So MDL 3047 is where cases have been consolidated, and it's being consolidated in a court in California from states, from school districts, and from parents, typically. And they are being looked at all together, and the discovery around what is going on with whether it's Instagram, TikTok, Meta, YouTube, is all being looked at together. So there are a number, like 500 cases in this MDL 3047 that have been brought against social media companies. The states have gotten in the game, which is really important because that's where it starts to be sort of beyond just individual cases, really thinking about this as a national thing that we need to be paying attention to. So the states have brought their suits against Meta. They were also added into this multi-district litigation. I know I'm saying words that we've only ourselves just gotten familiar with. So please, as we go forward, if you have questions, let me know and we'll try to answer them. We're learning too. So the dark purple are the states that have collectively filed a suit. The pink, if you're in one of those states, are states that have individually filed a suit. Basically, what we are trying to do is say, and in red here, you'll see sort of the common thread throughout all of these suits is that they're claiming that the defendants of the social media platforms are defective because they're designed to maximize screen time, which can encourage addictive behavior in adolescents. And that can result in various emotional and physical harms, including death. The lawyers that are trying these cases are now trying to figure out how do you monetize that just in simple ways to sort of say, this is what this has cost us as a nation, as schools, as parents, as kids, what is it? What is that? And so we are basically trying to ensure that as that happens, we are thinking about youth development programs as the antidote to some of this, right? So if truly, these platforms are being made addictive, youth development has been there through meth addiction, through teen pregnancy prevention, through, all kinds of negative behaviors and also addictive behaviors that have popped up over the generations. Youth development programs, after school programs, youth workers, mentors, all of that stuff has been there to sort of pick up the pieces. So we see this as an opportunity to do that. Also, specifically places where young people's mental health is being protected and those protective factors are happening. And so, we think there's some really clear ways to carve out a space for youth development programs to be one of the, I haven't said this yet, but one of the end recipients of any settlement dollars that would happen through these cases. And I'll talk about this in a moment, but you think about like the tobacco settlement, or you think about the opioid settlement. That's what we're aiming for here, is something like that resources then have to be put back into the public good, essentially, to pay for some of the things to remediate what has happened. So again, when we think about how these companies have made money hand over foot for some years now, huge corporate profit, right, for this addictive technology that they've put in place. At the same time, after school programs and the public funding that exists to support them has really been stalled or stagnant at best. I mean, 21st Century Community Learning Centers has hung at around $1.5 million for decades, right? I ran one of the first 21st Century Community Learning Center programs back in the, in 2000, or no, sorry, it was 1994. And the resources for that program have not really even kept up with inflation. So, and we know how many young people are sort of waiting for an after-school program. So that's really important to keep in mind. So what next? If in fact they're making these things addictive, if these cases are being brought, if we know after school would be a good end recipient of any settlement dollars, we believe that at Children's Funding Project at least, that opportunities and programs promoting positive youth development are underfunded and undervalued. And this potential settlement provides a chance to partially right that wrong, but it's going to take our field coming together in ways we haven't before to make that case and to demonstrate what good could look like and what good could look like in this environment. I mean, you heard Diana talk about some of the things that need to shift. We think it's really important, though, to not let this turn into technology companies coming up with a solution for a problem that technology companies created. So really important that we have opportunities for young people to learn to, I keep saying, play the trumpet, build a trail, make a crepe, like things that they could learn to do. And we have to start naming what those things are as a field. So the status of MDL 3047, there are these things called bellwether cases that are going to be brought or that are being brought actively. Most of them in school districts, some individuals as well. Bellwethers are essentially the way that, when you're faced with 500 cases in a bucket, how do you start to get some example cases, some case examples that would sort of represent the whole thing? So those things are happening. They should be getting tried in late 2025 is the estimate on that. So this is not a quick process. When we look back at, what happened with tobacco, that was a very long process. Opioids was a little bit faster. This will hopefully be faster than both of those, but it's also more complex and less of a direct sort of a clear-cut case making that's going on. So what we're hoping is that a social media settlement would follow some of the things that happened that were advancements, I think, with opioids. So in the opioid settlement, tobacco had no restrictions. $8 billion going out to states annually. States have been using it to fill budget gaps. Some states have done some things to really put, related things in place. In this case, we want to see the funding be restricted to certain things that reflect back on youth well-being, right? We don't want to have the kind of gray area that is sort of in the opioid playbook. I mean, I think we just saw a recent thing in Arizona. They're using their opioid dollars to pay for parts of their prison system, right? Like we don't want to see that happen. And then, we want to make sure that the experts in youth well-being, and that's not just youth mental health professionals, right? That's people who know young people and know what they need and want, are being turned to help guide those resources. So there are other experts out there making recommendations. You already saw this in Diana's slide, right? We're hearing people start to talk about it. What they're not doing is talking about youth development in that conversation. They're talking about digital citizenship. They're talking about how to lock up the phones and put them away. But what about structured youth development programs where young people are actively getting the things that they need, right? So that's what we want to make sure happens. And what we're doing at Children's Funding Project in partnership with the After School Alliance is beginning to build a coalition to start organizing ourselves around this. We're convening researchers and communications experts to help us think about what are the right threads, because there are so many threads you could pull on this thing, and what are the most salient ones that are going to tie that knot between youth development and protecting our young people from the harms of social media. Influencing the national discourse is going to be really important. It's got to be about more than just, sort of these things we've already been talking about. And then equipping advocates with tools to influence decision makers. So at some point, we will develop an advocacy toolkit that says, here are the ways to make sure, for instance, your state does the right thing on this. The other thing, let's see how fast I've gone here. Oh, I'm good. This is my last slide. So the other thing I would say is that, if you are interested in getting involved in this, the slides, when Ren sends them out, now you see me talking slower because I know I have 3 minutes left so I can breathe for a second.
Yeah, you can take your time. You can
yeah.
take your time, Elizabeth.
It's a lot of info to get through. So if people need me to go back to anything, please let me know. So the things we want folks to know now are, to sign on to join this coalition and receive some updates from us as things progress. There's an interest form. It's just a Google form that you can fill out. The link will be here in the slides. If you have stories, we are trying to collect some of those stories on the impact of social media and youth programs on youth mental health. So what are those things that you're seeing in your youth programs that either tell you something's working Or what are those, sort of sad stories to sort of say, this is what's happened in our youth programs because of this, right? We want to hear all of those kinds of stories. And then, amplifying this message and helping us reach key influencers in your network and do things like offer, op-eds in your community and use talking points and other advocacy tools that we put out and get folks talking about this. So that is what I wanted to share.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Elizabeth. Um, I'm making an assumption here, but are you working with the California After School Network?
We have had some conversations with them. Yep. Because California is sort of in the epicenter of this. So
Right.
I know a lot of your audience is in California. Look for, sign up on that interest form and indicate that, and look for more conversations to come in California.
Fantastic. Thank you. Unbelievable, right? Oh, okay. Let's see here. And I'm sorry, I hope that you didn't feel rushed. It sounded like you felt rushed, but we're
I
doing
always talk like that, though. I get
okay.
excited.
All right, but for the rest of the panelists, please, you're welcome to take a breath and slow down. We're doing fine on time. We're doing fine. Jamie, are you there and ready to talk to us?
Absolutely. Yeah. Can everybody hear me okay? How's my tone this morning? Do I sound like a dead frog? Yeah.
No.
Oh, great. Well, thanks for the affirmation there. Let me share my screen. Folks on the call, thank you so much for engaging your time. The hope that I have is to do a number of things with you this morning. Let me tell you just a little bit about who we are and what it is that I'm hoping to do. But I have, for the last sort of 20 years as a professional, thought how our students are being impacted both negatively and positively by tech, but more importantly, how it is that they engage with tech for learning and engagement, right? And one of the things that we do at Common Sense and the work that I do at Common Sense is really help to support educators like yourself, to after school providers like yourself, in thinking about how to adopt principles to teach effective digital literacy. So at Common Sense, we do a number of things. If you are a parent on this call, you might remember us from the reviews that we do with media. So we review media that's developmentally appropriate for your child, and so we're rating and reviewing content, anything from videos to books to apps. The second thing we do is we're in probably about 73% of schools across the country. I don't know how many after school programs, but we provide a free curriculum helping educators support their students around digital literacy. Some of the work that Diana was speaking about, do some very similar parallel work. And then finally, we work with legislators to hold tech media companies accountable for some of the features that were described earlier. So a lot of the work that's coming out of California, as well as other states, we're essentially helping to address the issues around tech companies and manipulative features that they use. So, ironically, a number of years ago, I was leading an after-school program in San Francisco, and so I realized firsthand how challenging it is to implement and adopt some of these things that I'm going to be sharing with you today. So, my hope is that I do a few things this morning. I'm going to give you a way in which you can actually talk about and address these issues at your site, knowing the realities that Elizabeth and others have sort of presented. The first thing I'm going to sort of do, though, is really let you know what you can actually do about it. Before we get started, I think I do briefly want to just mention that the way we think about literacy and actually teaching our kids about safety and online engagement is through this curriculum. We partnered with the folks for the Center for Digital Thriving out of Harvard, and we help to sort of address these topics at hand, things from like digital footprint to media balance and well-being. All right, enough of the sales pitch. Let's get into it. It doesn't take me long to realize that at this point, you're probably hearing the alarmist sort of tone behind many of us this morning. I'm sure you wake up every morning thinking how you yourself are modeling healthy behaviors. I know I'm probably the worst at modeling that for my child, but we know that it's in front of us, right? Anything from cell phone bans to whether or not you should be deleting your TikTok account, it's very real. And my hope this morning is for you to actually breathe and come up with a game plan for how to actually talk about it to the youth that you serve. in a way that's really digestible, because it can get overwhelming really quickly. So the question, though, I think, in order to do that, is really helping is really this, and that is, how are you supporting your kids to think critically of the media consumption that they're in front of? If you're thinking that you're going to put a ban in your after school program, or if you want to let parents know what more things that should do, I'm probably here to tell you that that's not going to work. Many of us are not only like consumed by content, but use it in everyday part of our lives, from kids in after school texting their families to pick them up, to mom or dad or auntie or grandmother communicating what to eat on Uber Eats or wherever the thing is. It's every part of our lives. And so the idea is not to ban it, as Diana was talking about, but rather to think critically about when you're using it. And one of the ways that you can do that is coming up with a very consistent narrative, a way in which you to talk about it. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to infuse research, but the hope here is that you all on the call will actually come up with a narrative, a way in which you speak about it that actually gets not only you, but everyone that you work with to come up with your why. Why is it that we're embarking on digital literacy? Why is it that we need to address these in a much more critical way? The first sort of research that we do, one of the research let me backtrack. At Common Sense, in addition to things that we have, we also have a research arm where we're constantly researching trends that are happening in the industry. And these are some of the more later trends that I want to reference. But what I want to point your attention to is the slide at the very bottom, or the statements at the very bottom, which is your talking points that you want to really reference from the research. The first is that our we are all distracted by our devices, whether again it's the notification or whether it's the alarm that you set. We are all distracted and inclined to pick up that device. The second is primarily for our youth. What we found is that they're encountering negative attacks, not only on their overall well being, but also on their identity. And so we're attempting to build resiliency skills, but you should note that our kids are constantly having the pressure and are encountering those type of experiences online. And finally, the idea here is that when our kids respond, there's often pressure to be available and to be part of their social connections with their peers. And so if you are a parent, or if you're thinking, well, let's just wait until we get a device, that doesn't always work for our kids, because there is a social sort of ecosystem of pressure for kids to not only be available, but to be fitting into the social sort of strata of what embodies the communications amongst our youth. Let me quickly give you kind of references to this narrative, but this is how I sort of might use it. The research pointed out that on any given day, our kids are picking up their phones about 51 times a day, but those numbers were as high as 100 plus. During the school day, our kids are using their devices about 43 minutes per day, hence sort of the need for and the pressure for schools to start adopting no phone policies. I would imagine if you're running an after school program, or if you work directly with youth after school, you will probably see kids inclined to both pick up their phone and be on their phones during your programming time. This is probably the most alarming, which is that on any given day, kids are receiving about 237 notifications a day. So if you're constantly distracted again by your device, it's hard to pay attention to the programs that are actually in front of you. So the hope here is that you start to recognize that we're all distracted, and use that as a talking point to the families and the individuals that you work with. The second has to do, and Diana mentioned this, and I really loved her session or presentation, because it does mention that our kids are continuing to experience these depressive symptoms. And so we know prior to the pandemic, kids started to exhibit some depressive symptoms. And we know that despite it coming down after the COVID-19 sort of pandemic, they're still high. They're still at the sort of pre-2018 level. So something to note. But it gets really tricky. And I think both Diana and others have mentioned this, which is um, we can't demonize the technology, because often our kids are using social media to gain support from their peers around some of these issues. And so I want to point you to the slide that when we surveyed our students, and again, this is students that are 14 to 22 years old, but I want to point you to the very end, which is For the most part, 70% of kids that were surveyed are finding that they're getting inspiration from others online. There's also feeling less alone, that there's a continued sort of like need that over 50% of our kids said that social media sort of presents this connection. Their peers have that sort of connection. So again, I don't want to discredit what was shared early. I just want to make sure that we have a balanced view of what it is that we're talking about when we address these issues. Finally, I think it's very important to note that our young adults are not always equipped to understand the impact of their own media use. And I want to point to sort of two figures here that we have. The first is that 40%, a little under 40%, suggested that they recognize that being online has reduced their attention span. We still have about 60% of our kids that say that have not recognized that, right? So we want to be super mindful. And the other thing is the impact on their overall sleep. Now, I can have an entire session on sleep deprivation and its impact on learning, particularly for schools and after school program. If you've ever seen your kids yawning, you can kind of recognize what I mean by that. But again, I digress. I want to just note that our hope here is that we develop a narrative to understand that our kids both are distracted, are encountering negative experiences online, and also are having and feeling the pressure to respond or be a part of those experiences. What would I do with the research if I were in your shoes? Here's what I would do. I would select one of those themes and communicate that to your families, communicate that to your peers. This is your why behind your statement. What I'm going to give you now, and what I'm going to close with is, if I were in your shoes, three very practical steps you might be able to use to incorporate both digital literacy and awareness over some of these issues. The first is we're going to really think about how to assess your climate, what is actually going on with your students. I know many of you survey your students if you work in after school programs, if you're directly connected to funding, but we're going to assess that. I'm going to give you some resources in a second. The second is really helping your kids identify one of the skills that is necessary to think critically about their online use. And then the final thing is I'm going to give you some communication, some ways in which you can support your families during the time that when you want to raise awareness over these issues. So first, let's sort of, again, I'm systemically very trying to sort of build this practical kind of approach to you. What I would do first is define for yourself and your community what makes a safe digital space. And I've given you sort of an example here, which is a safe digital space in your after school program might be a place where students know how to manage their emotions. Maybe they're building positive relationships online, or maybe they're making very much responsible decisions. The key here for you and your staff, or you and your kids, is to ensure that you are coming up with an operational definition, a narrative, some way in which you talk about what makes a safe space in your space itself. Once you define what that is, the next thing we want to do is, as I pointed out, is assess what is actually happening in your space. And one of the things that you can really help to address, and gaps that I've sort of seen, is you might find that the parents that are picking up the kids after school are misinformed about the technology use. They might not be modeling those behaviors for their kids. Perhaps you have staff that are new, or perhaps you have staff that have their own sort of distractions with technology. So perhaps staff don't actually see the relevance of teaching some of these skills to the students. Right? You might have other things though. You might have social media issues that are disrupting programming, where kids are texting one another in your program. The key here is that you want to make sure that you're identifying in your climate what the gaps are to learning when your kids are there after school. I've given you a few examples of what other schools do that I think are great about assessing families. Most of them are school districts, and I can find an after school one after the fact, but there's some really, really great questions that are asked. Again, this doesn't have to be a long process. This can be 2 to 3 questions. The idea is you want to ensure that you have the accurate pulse of what's happening in your community. So again, I pointed to a number on these slides, are links. By all means, feel free to copy and paste them and duplicate those efforts, duplicate some of the questions if it's helpful for your setting. I've also created one for your that Common Sense is provided, so by all means, feel free to take a look at that. Once you are done assessing that, you're going to take that content and then you're going to come up with an actual framework for how you want to teach your kids. And so the idea here is you want to reframe the issues into an activity or skill that kids can actually learn. What I've given you here is a table that can help you to define those skills in a way that's really helpful. So on the left-hand side here, you have a column that suggests that where you can note for yourself and your staff the core issues that you're actually trying to address. Maybe in your community, you have tweens that are using social media to spread rumors while they're in the program. Maybe you have kids that are playing roadblocks during the time that they should be doing programming. Where you want to note here is this very specific issues that are you're grappling with. I also want to name that the sun has sort of hit my face. So pardon me that the Hawaiian sun has done it. Woe was me, I guess, everyone. Sorry about that. The second column then is really the skills that you're trying to build within your students. So are you teaching them how to be self-aware of what those issues are? Are you teaching them how to make responsible decisions when they're online? This goes beyond just simply making them aware of the topic into giving them agency, some of the stuff that I really loved about what Diana just shared in her content. And then finally, the third column is about making sure that you are then teaching lessons or activities that reinforce that skill. It's not you start with the lesson and then you work your way backwards. It's you start with the issue and then you embed the skill that you want to teach within your students. I've done the work for you here. So I essentially created an entire scope and sequence of themes that you can create. So if you want each, I'll quickly show you what that looks like. Each of these are broken into lessons, and each of these bullet points are the outcomes from that. So maybe you want to talk about feelings when using technology, or saying goodbye to technology for younger kids, or maybe you want to address how to actually have friendships that have boundaries for a young adult or the teens that you work with. If you click on the link itself, you will actually see the lesson and an activity that you can share with your students. And most of what I shared is about 15 minutes to 20 minutes in length. And so the idea here is that you will have some time to still run programming. I've also given you an example that is run in an after school or in a middle school program here. This is again with Fremont Unified School District. This is an 8-week course, but I encourage you to look at that because there's a lot of projects built in to this that might be extremely relevant for after school programs. All right, let me close just sharing what I believe to sort of be the most important here, and that is in whatever you share with families, please, please, please simplify your message. Families are not only overwhelmed, but they don't need to be spoken at. They need some very subtle tips that they can do something with. And so I'm going to give you an example of what that can look like. Sometimes families will ask me, well, Jamie, when is it okay to get a phone? Right. So these are very simple dilemmas that then we at Common Sense decided to make a very short video assessing what families need to consider before they get a phone. I won't play it for the sake of time, but I will make sure that you have access to this video for it. But again, the idea here is, or a potential idea is that maybe once a month on your screen, you can have videos like this being sent out to your families. Maybe this is a link that you have as a newsletter that you send to families as an update to what's happening. Maybe you want to create a program where the actual kids are recording themselves if you have the resources and capacity to just sort of do that. The idea here is you want to just share quick tips and ways that families can engage with that content. I'm going to give you just sort of the final thing, which is just sometimes families just need conversation starters. And so what I've done for you here is for each of these themes that we've referenced, and there's plenty more. I mean, the Common Sense is filled with too many resources, in my opinion. Shout out to my organization. I love them, but we create a lot. The idea here, though, is that we can give you, and you can share ways in which families can talk about issues that are happening and impacting their kids' use at home. And so these are things that families can ask. So the idea here is all families want to do, or all kids and families can do, is actually have these conversations. It doesn't happen over the dinner table because we know nobody often shares dinner at these days, but it could happen in the car, right? The idea here is that families can have conversations to start talking about some of these issues with their kids. Right. If you feel like a simple message is not enough, we have some resources around a video series that you can create. I've outlined what that video series could look like on this slide here, but the idea is that you can then have families come in to have regular conversations about how to impact these issues with their kids if there's time. If not, maybe you can consolidate these short videos into themes that you can then send out for families that are not aware. All right. I believe that's it. I want to make sure that you all know that I've given you one final page, which is, Jamie, that there is just too much information that you shared. How do I put this all in one page to ensure that everyone understands what it is that we're doing? And so what I've done is shared an example that when I worked with the state of Washington to help kind of address some of these initiatives. But this document essentially has what I've just outlined for you, the areas that you want to address, the activities that you want to that you're trying to reinforce, the character, the skills that you're trying to reinforce, and then what specific initiatives or calendar of events that you might actually have. It's a really, really great way. I'll share this again with you. It's a really, really great way that you might be able to then share this out with your community. This could be your staff, this could be your funders, this could be your families. I've modified it just to ensure that it is relevant for an after school community. So, all right, enough talking. Let me smile at you. You got this, folks that are on this call, but note that it doesn't have to be overwhelming. It should really be just practical and how you approach it.
Wow, Jamie, thank you. So many practical resources. How fantastic. Thank you so much. We're going to let you get, what island are you on there?
I'm in Oahu this morning, so a little hot, but we're okay. And as much as I'd like to say I'm on vacation, folks, I'm actually working. So after this call, I have many other presentations to do. So, but it's still nice.
Thank you so much. Mahogany, would you like to share with us some things?
Yes, I will. So hi, everyone. My name is Mahogany. I'm the Advocacy and Health Coordinator at Girls Inc. of Alameda County. I've currently been there for 3 years. However, I've been working with and for the youth for the past 16. And so today I don't have a really cute slide as my previous panelists, but I do have some really powerful information around my programs, some things that we've done as an organization to help break this stigma between mental health and social media usage, and just all of the impacts that we've seen in what we've done so far. So I'm just going to go ahead and jump into it. So like I said, this is an after school program. My after school programs are Tuesday through Thursday. We service 9th through 12th grade girls and gender expansive youth. So the 3 programs that I oversee is HEART, which stands for Helping Everyone Achieve Respect Together. It's designed to empower youth with essential knowledge and skills regarding reproductive and sexual health and wellness. So they talk about menstrual health care, they debunk myths, we understand the relationship with themselves and any other partners, platonic and romantic, that may come into their lives. There's HER, which stands for Healthy Evolving Relationships, which is dedicated to empower youth with knowledge and skills to foster healthy relationships and their personal well-being. So they talk about domestic violence. We explore mental health facts and myths, and overall just breaking the stigma and opening up that conversation. They establish boundaries and build body positivity and self-esteem. And then there is ACT, which stands for Advocating Change Together. And it's designed to equip youth with the tools and skills to become effective advocates, not only for themselves, but their communities as well. They explore advocacy, build leadership skills, foster community building, and social justice skills. So with all of that being said, some of the impacts that I have seen with my youth, not only from this year, but previous years as well, just through conversation, discussions in program, or just check-ins that we do periodically throughout the time. So some of the positives is creativity and self-expression through social media has helped their mental health and well-being because they're able to express their talents, their hobbies, their opinions, and it encourages creativity to help boost their self-esteem. So for example, TikTok, not everyone enjoys it, but there is an educational side of it. And so they get tutorials, they get educational benefits, and it helps actually help the traditional learning that they are getting in school. Because as my wonderful panelist said before, they are in schools, however, they are stuck to their screens for a lot of the time out of the day. So their attention span is a little frayed. Sometimes they only get about 15, 30 seconds at max to get their attention. So really holding them in with that. And overall, just some connection with community. I do have a lot of students that have family outside of the States, outside of California. And so it's a good way for them to stay connected with their peers and family members. Now, some negative aspects that we have seen so far is FOMO, which stands for fear of missing out. A lot of our students, let's say that they get their phone taken away for whatever reason it may be, but they have a fear of missing out on posts that may go out, conversations, interactive activities, parties, just overall events. And without them being there, they felt as though they did not belong anymore. They started to just work on their own self-image. Some other negative aspects is exposure to misinformation. A lot of what we do in my programs is debunking the myths that they're said online. Sometimes you can search something up on Google and Google always tells you that the worst case possible is going to happen. And so just debunking those and making it an easier conversation, because we've noticed that, everyone has something that has gone in their life or something that is currently going on. But if you're not talking about it, everyone feels alone, or they feel as though they are this awkward being. And even though this person right next to you may have a solution or just a shoulder for them to lean on. So overall, with social media, we find that balance is key, encouraging responsible usage, setting limits on their screen time, fostering open communication and online experiences. So just overall using that in program has been really helpful. Let's see what else I have here. All right. So in a world that often pressures young people to wear a mask, we envision a welcoming sanctuary where they can truly be themselves. Our intentional safe space that we designed here at Girls Inc. are for our youth to let down their guard and share their stories and connect with one another. Here, acceptance reigns as the highest power. We provide a comfortable, judgment-free environment where young people can express their thoughts, feelings, and whether that be through art, discussion, or simply sitting in silence and engaging with their peers. This tends to be a safe space where they're able to let down their guard and talk about the real issues that are bothering them, that they may not be able to talk about at home, in their communities, or even at school. Regular activities that we do here include guided discussions on various topics for each individual program. However, there are some similarities talking about mental health, identity, fostering a healthy community, and overall just boosting their confidence. So when they go out in the world, they know what they're talking about. If they see something on social media or anyone says anything to them, they know that they're okay and they have the power to keep on going. So overall, as an organization, we promote openness and vulnerability. We are empowering our youth to build resilience, develop coping skills and strategies, embrace their authentic selves. And together we are creating a community where everyone feels valued and heard in this space, because masks are optional. However, kindness is essential. So it's just some things that we also foster that I've already touched upon that you can foster into your everyday lives, into everyday conversations, classrooms, car rides, hanging out in the kitchen, however that may be for you, is having open dialogues around things that are going on in the world. Talk about mental health, talk about what you've seen on social media or what you've seen on the news, talk about what you're seeing in the grocery stores, just having open conversations because it helps draw from just looking at a screen to having face-to-face usage. Use positive language. Don't always talk about the negative aspects on social media, because I don't know about you, but if for me, my experience has been when we tell them not to do something, they lean even deeper into it. And so just use the positive aspects as well. Don't always lean on the negative. We tend to lead by example. So you can always lead by example by talking about the own things that are going on in your own mental health. Talk about how social media has changed. Talk about how the impact that it's made for you or what you've learned. Be empathetic. Show empathy and understanding towards those who are struggling. Your approach can influence how teens perceive and respond to mental health issues. Humanizing ourselves can help them go a really long way. And then overall, just encouraging them to seek help. Make it so that it's not something that is this Mount Everest type of conversation, but it's something that's really in their grasp and that they can actually do. And just overall check in with them. If you are telling them to go get this resources and you're giving them all these things, make sure that you're checking back in with them and not just leaving the conversation there. And some other things that you can do is build some curriculum like Jamie had mentioned, and also just everyone else, they mentioned curriculum around social media literacy, workshops, and having guest speakers come in to help them just debunk all of these things. Let's see. And then this is my last thing, Ren. With all that being said, I believe that after school programming and just youth programming plays a crucial role in breaking the stigma between mental health and social media usage by fostering open dialogue, promoting awareness, and providing essential tools for healthy engagement. By integrating these strategies, youth programs can significantly reduce stigma, encourages healthy relationships, conversations, and empower young people to take charge of their mental health and social media usage.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Mahogany. What a beautiful, vast array of the overall scope of what's happening in this arena and some super beautiful practical applications. There was a question in our question and answer from Jazz, who asked if they will have access to the curriculum that Jamie presented, and yes, we will for sure get that to you after the webinar. All the resources and a copy of the recording from today. You're welcome, Jazz. So let me just ask you all, the audience out there, if you have any questions for our panelists in particular, if you want to come off mic and just talk about what's happening in your programs or in your communities. And I see that Jazz has raised their hand. All right, Jazz, I'm going to allow you to talk.
Okay, thank you. And thank you all for your presentations. It was really helpful. Mahogany, I liked how you said to encourage youth to seek help. And I think that's a great thing. And my question is like, well, do they even understand that there's an issue? Like some might not. Like this whole time, I was thinking about one of my scholars, like she is totally addicted to me. And I know that could be like very invasive to say, or it might seem like judgmental if I were to say like, you're addicted to your phone, because I mean, she cannot stay off. She's TikTok famous, so I'm like, well, what's my approach? Like some things I say, like if she's always on her phone, I just like use like in terms of endearment, like, you look great, just put the phone away until after, I just do little things like that. But I never like had these conversations. So it's just so many good gems that I learned from. And, what would y'all suggest in that case? Because I think this is just her normal, to not be able to put that phone down.
Thanks, Jazz. Does anybody have a response?
I do. I'll jump in because I wanted to say this earlier, but I love one thing that Jamie said. Well, I liked a lot of things he said, but specifically how we speak about it is so important. And that I wrote it down because that resonated with me so much. And, you know, we hear the word addiction so much. And I just want to point out, you know, that in the medical sense, there's no such thing as technology addiction. And I think it's malpractice for us to use that word. And it does a couple things. It makes a kid feel powerless and it makes a kid feel like they have a health issue. And I think that if we turn it around and just talk about, you know, of course there's problematic use, but if we turn around and say, what are you doing online and what do you get out of it? And that's the benefit sometimes of doing lessons with peers together, is that you're not lecturing them. They're doing an activity together that allows them as peers to talk about their usage and each other's usage and maybe find a better balance that everyone can agree on, because kids love what their friends do, you know? And if you put these wonderful lessons in front of them and let them figure it out for themselves, it's so much better than telling kids they have an addiction. So would be my 2 cents.
Yeah, thank you.
Jazz, that's a wonderful. First of all, I loved your questions, and it just sounds like you have a really positive disposition. So kudos to you for being such a cool human being over this virtual screen.
Thank you.
I just two things. One is I would try to pull out the agency of the engagements that she had. So if she's like regularly recording herself. And again, I'll give you my email address, but I might encourage her to talk about the struggles that she has with it and using the platforms that she has, right? And if you're interested, you know, Common Sense is doing teen interviews starting in November. That could be a way in which she thinks cognitively the things that she's doing without feeling overwhelmed on that. My concern, and maybe one thing that you could work with her on, is subtle breaks just to start. Like, what are the breaks? Where are your breaks at? And so helping her to kind of develop those mental breaks would be just one way if you feel like it's a little overwhelming for her, or if you feel like as an outsider it's overwhelming. And then the second thing I might encourage her is give her, I think Diane and others pointed out, but scenarios are like subtle things. It's like, okay, this happened. How would you actually respond to it? And can you record yourself saying that? Because I think there's a lot of merit and a lot of highlights. So coming from a place of strength and thinking about where those like subtle breaks are, just so she doesn't feel like it's an overwhelming kind of experience, as you pointed out. So hopefully that helps. But I'll add my email address because it sounds like she's a bright young lady, I presume, that could offer some support to others.
Yes, thank you.
Thanks, Jazz.
I'm no longer a practitioner, but I did just interview 2 guys that I worked with back when I was, and they're still doing this work, and they are like the OGs of youth work. They have been in the community doing this work for 30 years and are so well regarded in what they do. And Howard, one of the guys, said to me, he was like, you know, this is a place where young people are forming their identity, and we're helping them to form that identity. And so I wonder if there's something about that's helping her form her identity, or that's giving her a sense of who she is. And then they also said that what they are able to do in their program is, once young people have that, they're able to really invest in their curiosity and get them engaged in other things. And so I don't know, it just struck me that there's something forming her identity about that, right? That
Yeah.
she's doing, and maybe there's a way to engage her in that in some other things. I don't know.
Yes, thank you.
Diana, I did want to come back to this addiction thing, because I would just want to put I think we're using that word partly because, you know, the time hasn't elapsed to be able to identify that it is, like the research is still new, right? But I hope you agree that the companies are intentionally trying to make the products as addictive as possible.
Yeah. And again, right, I agree with you there for sure. But I hesitate using that word in front of teens because I feel like I don't want them to feel like,
Sure.
oh, it's not my fault. You know, I have no agency. I think agency
Right.
is so important for them to understand that they have control over their tools. So
And then just to echo what my other panelists said, but also just encouraging her to use this social media skill that she is using, because since she's fully involved in it, maybe involve it with like a future career or a
Mhm.
skill, see if she can get any internships around that.
Mhm.
Involving it in end of the year projects. So maybe she could do like a
Mhm.
social media project and present that
Right.
to families. And just having open discussion, because in my experience, when I single one student out, that's when they tend to tell me, oh, nothing's wrong. I'm doing
Mhm.
great. You don't know what you're talking about. And so just having open discussions with everyone in the space, even if it's like a nonverbal discussion, you could do an activity that we do in program. It's a post-it pilot. So for example, you'll have multiple sheets around the room and they'll have questions and everyone gets post-it notes. They write down their answers and they go, and it's an anonymous. So you can just have open discussion around these topics that everyone is struggling and handling. But it's not always so open.
Yes. Thank you all. I appreciate that. Yeah, this makes me think about like you said, Mahogany, the end of the year presentations, because I work with the 11th and 12th graders for the college readiness. So that's my theme all year. And so spring semester we do what we call spring facilitation, and they basically in program and they facilitate program on like various college going topics. And so having her do this, like, okay, well, how can you utilize social media to increase study habits? I'm just thinking like out loud, making that college connection, because that's our theme. Or let's make a TikTok about, the 5 study habits that you could have, so I really like that, because that topic is not on our list and it should be.
Fantastic. Thank you,
Mhm.
Jazz.
Thank you. And if you don't mind, can you mute me, Ren?
Yes, I'm going to.
Thank you very much.
Alrighty. Are there any other people who would like to come off mic? Just raise your hand. All right, Ray, welcome.
Hi, can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Great. So I was wondering, like, what do you think is a great way to get this curriculum into middle school? Or like, how can I connect with our administration so I can get maybe our health and wellness teacher to start teaching this?
All right, panelists, how do we get it into schools?
You ask. You tell, I mean, I'm sure Jamie's got lots of stories as well, but I think in almost every case where our curriculum is being taught in middle school, it's because a parent went to the administrator and said, my kid needs this. We had you spent 8 hours last week dealing with a TikTok problem. Why don't you spend that 8 hours preempting those problems by teaching digital literacy to the students? So parents have a really loud voice. And I think if they ask, a lot of times that's how curriculum gets implemented into the day. And in addition to that, I always say digital literacy is today's literacy. All of these lessons, all of common sense media lessons, all of our lessons are aligned with standards that teachers have to teach anyway. So you might as well be teaching them through digital literacy, because it's something that the kids get excited about and something they will use in their future.
And if I could just put a fine point on that. So I would be curious, one, if there is something that teachers should stop teaching and start teaching this, and then two, what you think the cost of teaching this across this nation would be.
Well, Elizabeth, if you find out what not to teach in schools these days, please give me that lottery ticket, right? Because it seems like there's more.
I mean, you can guess why I'm asking the question, right? Like I'm trying to tease out, like, okay, so what does that cost us as a country?
Yeah. Ray, I don't know if I just echo what Diana shared. I think parents are a really great way to start that pressure with administration. I don't know where you're at, but I'm happy to help to give you templates around implementation at a school district level. Heck, I might even be working with your school district. But another great thing is just instead of having an additional thing that teachers need to teach, I might figure out where content is already being aligned. Like, you sounded like you had a wellness program, so I might come up with an entirely different wellness initiative that embodies what wellness looks like online. So these are real subtle approaches just to kind of get your foot in the door. You know, maybe you want to just start with messaging and supporting families. And to Elizabeth's point, I think they're on a broad level, administrators, it'd be nice to have conversations with fellow teachers, whether it's union or whether it's administrations, to think about where teachers are doing too much and where they can actually input content like this. Let me give you a quick example, right? A number of years ago, there's quite a lot of money for ESSER funding. The federal government gave school districts a bunch of money to implement all sorts of things around technology. Well, that money's all dried up, right? And so the residual effect of that means that the technology that was once invested in, like last year and the year before that, unless there's more money to replace that, that will likely be dry, if not this year, next year. And so the hope here is that you can share in less than a paragraph what that process and what teaching could look like with tech, with limited access. One of them being teaching digital literacy, one of them being partnering with after school providers. So just subtle ways in which you can talk about how administrators think about education might be a really great way to introduce digital literacy in our curriculum. So, but please holler, I'm happy to help you out with templates or ways that you could speak with administration. Good question.
Yeah, and Elizabeth, just to answer the first part of your question, ironically, when we launched Cyber Civics in 2012, it was at a school that had a series of lessons called Civics that had become very dated. And so we changed it to Cyber Civics, thus the name. So that's one place to put it. But I get asked this all the time from schools. And one of the key areas that we've aligned with are ELA standards, because our curriculum really dives in on information literacy and media literacy. So you're actually teaching English language arts. So a lot of our schools teach it during that time period. But in addition to that, it's been done like in advisory periods, social studies, history. There's a little bit of math in some of the lessons. And then we have a lot of religious schools, Hebrew schools and Catholic schools, and they do it during their religious segment. So there's just so many places you can put it, because it's kind of like killing two birds with one stone. You're meeting standards, but also integrating the digital literacy into it. So I just think that part's not the hard part. The hard part is, you know, getting all the hoops that you got to jump through between administrators and districts and all of that to get to the yes.
Thank you. Was that good, Ray?
Yeah, that was great. Thank you so much.
Anybody else want to talk to us? Not seeing anything. Panelists, is there anything you want to say to each other?
I loved all the presentations and I learned a lot. I took a lot of notes, so thank you all.
It was wonderful to hear all of the things that you guys are doing and implementing with all the different programs and youth that you guys are influencing. So thank you for being co-panelists.
Yeah, I mean, if you all ever want to collaborate, it looks like there's quite an overlap between all the work that we all do. So on the off chance folks want to stay in touch afterwards, I'm always happy to collaborate again on something.
Yeah, really appreciate, again, the array of work that everybody is doing. Oh, Jazz has got one last thing to say to us. Welcome on in, Jazz.
I am so sorry. I did not mean to do that. But
Oh,
since I'm on Jamie, what's the best way to get your contact?
so Jazz, I actually just sent it to you.
Okay, let me see. Oh, you sure did. Thank you.
Yeah, holler, Jazz, please. I'm happy to. I mean, I usually reply within 24 hours. So
Okay, thank you.
yeah, lots of love. Best of luck with everything.
Thank you so much. Same to you.
Okay. Any last words of wisdom for everybody out there trying to manage this digital media onslaught? Stay strong. Keep talking.
How about good luck? Huh?
All right. Well, I don't want to hold you longer than we have to. Again, really appreciate your time and all of the incredible work that you're doing out there on behalf of all of us. Just let me reiterate for everybody that we will be sending out the material that was shared with you today. And of course, if you want to watch more videos, check out our How Kids Learn YouTube channel where all of our webinars are posted. Thank you so much. Appreciate your time.
Thank you
Thank
all.
you.
Take care.